I really mean that we need to pray for Cyril Ramaphosa. I was very privileged not to work that close with him, but I started the African Christian Democratic Party, ACDP, in 1994 with Reverend Kenneth Meshew. And those were just some of the most outstanding years in my life. And because I'm a constitutional legal person, I was very privileged in 1996 to represent the ACDP as well in a lot of the drafting of the Constitution from 1995, 1996. And as you know, that Constitution was a transitional arrangement to draft the future of our beloved country. And there I was very privileged to get to know Cyril, and then obviously Rolf Meyer that was drafting it. But then already it was a government of national unity. And it was very beautiful years because there was no self, no greed, no power. It was all about the people and about the country. And I saw Cyril really, his heart in those years. And Nelson Mandela really respected and loved him a lot and believed in him to usher in our country in a new dispensation. And so as a result, I've seen him for many, many years, the last 30 years, really being the only leader in our country that was for 30 years in the cabinet. And then he was 10 years, he was deputy minister to the very controversial Mbeki and the Zuma years, and then 5 years as president before his second term now as president. And I was, in my latter years, I've become very involved in civil activism, which I hope to talk to you about, if that's one of the questions. But the big thing is that I saw Cyril really going through some of the most difficult times as a president. If we think of COVID, we think of the Durban riots, if we think of the economic downturn, and how really he had to be under a huge amount of pressure. And then the Zuma transition and the Zondo Commission, I don't think there's any person that can take all that. Why did weet ek nou nie? Because I mean, he's got a couple of million in the bank, and why he's still doing all this, heaven only knows. But and then to see him doing the transition and taking the knock of the elections, and I was very privileged to be at the Rock in the election, to see the election results. Now for the 1994 election, and how that the new energy came in, and then to see him negotiate and take his party into the new government of national unity. And the reason why I said we need to pray for him, firstly, I really believe in the principle you need to give honor where honor is due. En ek weet in my persoonlike kring vriende en goed, baie mense het gesê how Cyril has disappointed us and Cyril isn't a decision maker and he isn't a leader and all that. But I honestly believe that there is no person that was more qualified, trained and experienced to lead our country through this Rubicon years. En weet jy nog verder, net hierdie naweek het ek gesien when the executive was busy looking at why did they do so badly, the ANC executive, why they did so badly in this election result. Cyril was the one that stood up and said the people weren't satisfied with us, and it showed at the polls. And the best thing that we could have done is to go for a government of national unity, because it's about time that we focus on the people and not the political party of the ANC. And that heart is something that is quite outstanding. Now I get to the point about praying for him. So colleagues, the big thing is once you've been in the belly of the beast, which I've been for 30 years in the political landscape, it all goes about factionalism. And hulle sê mos, your enemy is not the person that sits opposite you, your enemy sits next door to you or behind you. And so I know that there are huge attempts and endeavors already within the ambit of the ANC to get rid of Cyril. Because truly, if you even a business leader and you've got you drop 20% or your company drops in profits 20%, dis altyd die leiers se fout. But I really believe that Cyril needs to try and just stabilize our government for a few years and carry us through. And there are already endeavors to get rid of him. And the facts are that once Cyril leaves, it totally puts our country at risk. And let me explain that to the viewers. So firstly, in the Government of National Unity, it's very much that they agreed that Cyril will be the president. And then our constitution, because we are a constitutional state, gives enormous powers to the president. He nominates his cabinet, he nominates his deputy and all his ministers. So should the ANC go to an election and they nominate a new president, the GNU, the Government of National Unity, doesn't need to accept the new president. What happens is, as soon as a new president comes in, the total GNU collapses. And a new president comes in, and the new president will nominate his cabinet. And my heart is, and my feeling is, that should a new ANC president be elected, it won't look like the GNU today, because I think that the new president will rather be more leaning, and if it's a person like the deputy president, would love to see the inclusion of the EFF and then the trade unions and all the other far-right unions like the MK. And then already I know that political parties like the DA and the more conservative parties like the Freedom Front and the others will not form part of the Government of National Unity. And so when people say, will the Government of National Unity survive? I honestly mean and know that with Cyril at the head, it will definitely survive. And I saw it this weekend where the whole NEC and all the government linked subsidiaries of the ANC all support the Government of National Unity. They wanted to work, and so do all the other political parties. Should Cyril go, everything's going to change. Well, firstly, regarding Cyril, you must know he's a Christian. And in the years, actually, those that might not know him, that actually he was part of the Christian Union and head of the Christian student movements in his early years. And secondly, he is a moderate. You know, Cyril is not, if you have to label Cyril, is he a socialist, a liberal, or a conservative? I can only say, knowing him, he's a moderate. And he's consistent, you know, he's done some very bad things, and, you know, the Pala things will always hang over his head. I still believe that, and I know for a fact that money he never wanted for himself. I think he had to use it for the political party or whatever the facts are. I think he handled it badly, and it's a tragedy, but I think everybody does make mistakes and things, and I think that will still come clean in some way. But I really like that he's a moderate. And in politics, unfortunately, and I hope I'm not going to be sent a missile because of this statement, but politics is about power, greed, and money. Baie van die mense wil geld hê en posisie. Cyril doesn't need power, and he doesn't need position, and he doesn't need anything on his CV, because he's got it all already. And I think in your heart, if you're a person that really loves a country and believes that God has called you for a plan and purpose and a destiny to be a leader, I don't think there's a greater privilege than that. I don't think money can buy it. I really don't think money can buy it. I think it's a godly calling. He understands it and I understand it, and that's what makes him very unique and very special. I love the role of the church, because I think the church has been too dormant for many, many years. And that's why when we started the Christian Democrats in 1993, actually, the end of 1993, het ek aan baie deure gaan klop en sê, please, we need to stand up as Christians to really stand up and do something about this country. En baie van die mense het gesê, no, Michael, but, there's a separation of church and state. And I was a businessman, so I didn't really quite understand all that. But I think we've matured in our democracy, and I think the church has understood that we have got a role to look at the values and the custodianship of our people as well. And when there's poverty and when there's when our healthcare has collapsed and everything has collapsed, the church cannot be dormant in this any longer. And even the ANC was birthed in the church, and all the political parties have always... South Africa is still a 78% Christian nation, and they all respect and know and love the church leadership. And I think it's a maturing democracy, and I think the church has understood that there's such beautiful leaders in the church, and I think the church needs its voice to be known. And the church has matured and understood the role that they can play a role in politics. And then also I just want to tell the listeners, and if they don't know what the definition is of politics. Baie mense sê nee, maar ons stel nie belang in politiek nie, or we're not politicians. Well, I've got bad news for them, because the definition of politician is devoted citizen. So the only thing is, if you don't want to get involved in the landscape, then you're not a devoted citizen. So that is the groot ding, and that's why I'm wanting to encourage all the viewers today. Let's stand and hold hands and really make this country great. And in the church, for definite, that the church also stands and fulfills its calling and its purpose in this nation. So the big thing is, one of the greatest lessons that I've learned in my life is the power and the authority of civil activism. So let me explain that. So what happened is, with my whole journey on electoral reform about changing the Electoral Act, which has been a journey of 6 years, I thought, how do I do it? Because I need to use the politicians to see how they can redraft an electoral bill to change the Electoral Act that we've got now. And it's a baie lang gesprek. I then realized that civil activism has got more power than political parties. And then I formed the One South Africa movement, where I became chairman, and Musi Maimane then became the activist in that organization to mobilize electoral reform. And all of a sudden, I was exposed to a whole new grouping of 54, 60 activist organizations called Civil Activism, of standing and changing and getting involved to put pressure on the political landscape and the political leaders. Now, just to be a little bit confidential, or not confidential, but those that don't know me, I was in cabinet for 4 years in the Western Cape government. And during those years, I remember when people used to phone me and things, I used to, mense program is mal, jy weet, jy werk dubbele dae. But I remembered when all the great business leaders used to phone me, dan onmiddellik maak jy plek vir hulle, want jy sê, jy weet, die Christa Wiese wil jou sien, of iemand wil jou sien, then you make it. But little did I know the power of civil activists, that when a civil activist like the Helen Suzman Foundation or the F.W. de Klerk Foundation or ALTA or one of these big civil organizations wanted to see the power and the authority that comes with that. And so I really know that if the church grouping becomes quite vocal and activist, and I've always believed that a man like Brian Monacorn is so perfectly placed with his love and his history in raising up the local authorities and the government. The church needs to know the respect that they've got as a civil activist group, and not only as a church. And so they need to consolidate the church's voice. And you've seen the Archbishop of the Anglican Church, Bogoba, really uses his civil activist grouping and his voice in a very powerful way. And Bishop Tutu used it very powerfully, and he got a Nobel Peace Prize for his role. Unfortunately, and I say it with respect even to the NG Church and the grouping of the NG, hulle is nêrens te sien nie. And that is why I think they need to have a wake-up call that I'm going to also be personal. My vrou is a Picard, maar sy is Afrikaans, en ek is my ma is a Pretorius. I really love the Afrikaner. I've got a heart for them. I think they're hardworking. I think they are loyal. I think they are authentic. Alles wat jy wil hê, I think they are. And I know that the black person in South Africa loves and respects the Afrikaner. I know it as a fact. And I think it's about time that the Afrikaner stands up as a grouping and as a church that is Christ-centered, that is vocal, that is now saying we wanting to help build this country in a very powerful, authentic and loving way. I've never, honestly, in my 30 years, been more elated, expectant for this country. We've already seen investments starting to come loose. We've already seen a change of atmosphere, but I saw it with the election results at the Rock. I saw people hugging each other, and I just saw a different energy, a different season, and in all of this. But honestly, I saw a godly feeling long ago, about 3 years ago. I started speaking about the only way to change this country is that we all change a government of national unity, that there's no opposition. And let me just explain that to the listeners, that in my years, we had a government of national unity, but then I went in where the ANC became the opposition and the DA became the opposition, the ANC the government. And I saw a completely different spirit because it was an opposition spirit. Jy sê iets en ek moet op en neer. And that was for the last 15 years. And who are the people that suffered are the people down at the ground. Now Cyril has made a government where out of the total government, 68% have formed a government of national unity. So en ek sê dit nou met respek, sê nou byvoorbeeld die DA besluit om uit te gaan. There's still a government. Jy weet, daar is nie meer hierdie ding that they can say what they're wanting to do. So I'm wanting to say to all those South Africans, our season has come. I really mean it. For our families, our children, I believe that God is truly carrying this nation. And the prophecies are from Cape Town to Cairo. Jy weet, die vlam wat opkom. I really believe it's come to be. But we must never, ever forget our Lord Jesus in this whole thing, and the role of the church and the spiritual reformation and transformation in the hearts and the minds of our children. And I believe that's the role that leaders that are called to pastor must pastor our young people to stand up. And it's all about our young people, you know. And I'm excited. I'm a prayer warrior. I'm a person that believes in intercession. I'm a person that believes that the Holy Spirit will come in a very powerful way to change our nation to be the great nation that it is.